velocity. It wasn't there early. His last start of the spring, actually yesterday on Sunday, he hit about 94. I've asked tons of Yankee people, from Rothschild to Girardi to Cashman, and they say, listen, they'd love the velocity to be a little more than where it is right now, but they're not worried about it. And if you look at his numbers in the spring, his numbers are pretty representative. He's got an ERA just over 3. He's averaging about a strikeout an inning. And we also have to remember this is a guy who's developing a third pitch. The Yankees are insistent upon him using that changeup. They don't want him to be just a fastball slider guy. So I think Pineda's going to be fine. I really do. I think he's going to have to get adjusted to New York. Even in spring training, when he's had crowds of reporters around his locker, he never saw that in Seattle. Well, that crowd of 20 in Tampa is going to become a crowd of 50 in New York. So I think some of that he's going to have to get acclimated to. To his credit, English is a second language for him, and he is working very diligently at trying to speak English during all of his interviews, and I give him credit for that. While he's doing all the physical stuff on the mound, he's also trying to do the stuff off the mound to fit in. So he is one guy, though, I think goes into the season a lot with a microscope on him. In fact, the 3 people I would say that go into the season really, really being closely watched are Pineda, Hughes, and A-Rod. I just think that those are guys who the Yankees have to count on them to have very good seasons to get where they want to go.
And the Yankees also made another addition to their starting lineup this year with Hiroki Kuroda, who won 13 games with about a 3 ERA with the Dodgers last year. How did the Yankees feel about Kuroda?
I think this was a savvy signing by Cashman because he waited out the market, and Kuroda was a guy who wanted maybe $13 or $14 million a year. And the Yankees weren't going there. They had a $10.5 million slot or so. They wanted to sign the player, but they weren't going to overpay, essentially, because they want to get that payroll down, and they want to get it down by 2014, which is another story. I think Kuroda fits in as a nice piece in your rotation. Very, very comfortable in the clubhouse. Russell Martin talks about how he has 4 pitches in which he can get hitters out. Martin hadn't caught him, obviously, in a couple of years since their time with the Dodgers. He told me a couple of weeks ago that he thinks Kuroda's gotten better. He said it's rare that a guy from 31 to 33 or 32 to 34, however old Kuroda is, it's rare that he gets better, but he said he's seen more tilt on his slider. He thinks his curve is better. And then the pitch, Tom, that Yankee fans are going to come to love from Kuroda is his splitter. And with 2 strikes, he's going to throw that pitch, and he makes hitters look foolish. So will there be a transition, NL West, AL East? No doubt. It's going to be different. He's going to be facing lineups that he didn't have to face in the National League. But I just get the feeling by watching him that he's a competitor and a survivor, and that he'll do a nice job for the Yankees.
Now, the greatest closer of all time, Mariano Rivera, provided some headlines at the beginning of spring training, telling a few reporters he's already decided what he will do after this season. Do you think this season will be the last one as a Yankee for Mo?
You know, I've asked Mariano, after he made that initial comment, I interviewed him for a spring training special that's going to air on March 27th, and I asked him that again, and he keeps being coy, but if you're asking me to read the tea leaves, I think that this is it. I think that that's why he said that in spring training, because the way I look at it is, you can't say that you already know what decision you're going to make and have that decision be that you're coming back, because you don't know if you're going to get injured. Mariano Rivera is the best ever, so I don't think this is going to happen. But what if he pitched to a 4.5 ERA this year and lost his closer's job? So how could he say that he already knows what he's going to do and that be that he's coming back? I think what he's saying is, I already know what I'm going to do, and that is that I'm retiring. Now, guys change their mind, and he could be another one to change his mind. I did a story about a decade ago where Mariano told me he was going to pitch for 4 more years and then retire to become a minister. Well, he's pitched another 10 or 12 years since then. But I do think this time is different. I do think that he's gotten to a point where he's ready to do other things in his life. And there will never be another pitcher like him, and the Yankees will have to adapt. And David Robertson sits there as a possible heir apparent. But if you appreciate Mariano Rivera, I would say pay very close attention to him this year, because this is probably the last we're going to see of him.
Okay. A bit of a sad story now. You wrote that Yankees GM Brian Cashman called all the reporters into the dugout and delivered the news about Jaba's injury. You said Cashman seemed a bit shaken when he told everybody. So wondering if you could tell me what exactly happened to Jaba Chamberlain, and is there any clue as to how long he'll be out?
The way it was described to us, Tom, is that he was at one of these children's activities centers with his 5-year-old son, and Cashman said he hurt himself on a trampoline. It was a pretty gruesome injury, the fracture, the dislocation of the ankle with the bone piercing through the skin. So the latest news that is coming out of Tampa is that Chamberlain is telling Cashman that doctors have told him that he might be able to be back on a mound by July.
Wow.
I think the Yankees are going to temper that. I think the Yankees realize that this is a long road back for Jabba Chamberlain. It's his push-off foot on the mound. You don't want to hurt your arm as a pitcher, but you certainly don't want to hurt your leg either. And I know he's hurt a very important part of his body because it's all about your mechanics. If you have something wrong with your foot, you could eventually have something wrong with your arm. So I think the Yankees are being very cautious with him, and I don't think they know right now, Tom. There's no way they could say Jabba Chamberlain will be back by September 1st, or Jabba Chamberlain will miss all of this year and we'll see him in spring training. I think the way Brian Cashman first delivered the news, the belief was it would be very unlikely that you would see Jabba Chamberlain this year.
Okay. Now, the offense, you mentioned earlier that A-Rod's key. It's obvious that in the playoffs, when A-Rod's healthy and producing, the team's pretty tough to beat. Last year was tough for A-Rod. How do you think he'll bounce back, and is he completely healthy now at the start of the season?
He says he's completely healthy. We know he had a couple of procedures done in the off-season on his knee and his shoulder. Went to Germany for those blood-spinning procedures, and he says that he feels great. Yankees they can't get by with him playing 99 games. He knows that. But then the catch-22 there, Tom, is he also can't play 155, and I think Joe Girardi realizes that. I think you look at guys like Jeter and A-Rod, and if you're the Yankees, you hope they can play about 140 games. And Kevin Long told me once that when A-Rod is A-Rod, that everybody else in the lineup just has to be themselves. Nobody has to be above and beyond what they can be. Because if A-Rod produces, everything with the rest of the lineup should fall into line. And as you mentioned last year, that didn't happen. It definitely didn't happen in the postseason. So I would look for Girardi to really make use of Nunez and Chavez this year as guys who could fill in at third and make sure that A-Rod gets some DH days because injuries can happen at any time. But I do think it's the Yankees' obligation to try and make sure that they protect A-Rod as much as they can.
Derek Jeter's 37 years old, got the 3,000 hits last year, and really had a pretty nice season at the plate. Do you think Girardi is going to DH Jeter some this year, and is Jeter okay with being the DH?
I think he will, and even if he's not okay with it, that's why Girardi is the manager. And I mentioned that spring training special with showing up for us on March 27th. I asked Joe that question, too, and he knows these guys want to play every day, especially Jeter. Jeter hates to sit out, but I think he understands that he's got an aging left side of the infield, and if he wants those guys fresh in October, then he does have to make use of a guy like Nunez and get Nunez in there. And Nunez is an exciting player. Nunez deserves to get 300 at-bats or so. So I think it'll help everybody involved. And I give Jeter a lot of credit. I do think that a lot of people were writing him off last year. And for him to, from the 3,000 hit game on, I think he hit about 340 for the rest of the year. So he really did resurrect himself, and you have to give him credit because before that I think he was hitting about 260.
Last Yankees question, Robinson Cano. In my opinion, he's his team's best hitter. Can you envision Robbie taking home an MVP award this season?
I think he could, and I think you could say that about him every year. I think there were points last season where you would have thought that he was the leading candidate. I think he's the best player on the team. You say best hitter, I think he's the best overall player. When you add in the defense, he's as slick as they come at second base, and sometimes, I don't want to ever say you forget about him, because how could you forget about one of the best second basemen in baseball? But because of the reputation and the pedigree that the Jeters and the A-Rods and the Riveras have built up, sometimes when the people think Yankees, those names come first. But going forward, this is Robinson Cano's team. He's the engine that will drive this team. He's the guy who's going to outlast the Jeters and the A-Rods. He's going to be here longer, so he really, I think, understands that. I got the chance to go on a Major League Baseball tour where Cano and Granderson were on that tour. And when you see a guy play every day in the States, you kind of like, oh, there's Robinson Cano, and oh, the fans are cheering for him. To watch how he was received in a faraway land like Taiwan, it was very interesting to me. It sort of reminded me just how big a superstar this guy is. I think he knows that. I think he embraces that. And yes, I could easily see him winning an MVP, if not more than one, before his career is over.
Interesting. Okay, last question. I know you love music, and as a Jersey boy, by the way, I'm very jealous that you got to see Bruce in Tampa recently. A lot of my listeners want to know, what is popular right now on Jack Curry's iPod?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, this is going a little old school, but I just downloaded a Tupac song this morning, which I had heard on where did I hear it? I heard it somewhere, and I said, wow, I've never put that on my iPod. I'm an alternative music guy. I like to listen to things that would pop up on XM's Alt Nation. Those are so bands like Group Love, Young the Giant, bands that maybe other folks haven't even heard of, but stuff like that is what's popping up right now. But you know, if I had to pick favorite band of all time, for me it was The Clash.
Nice.
That's the band that I could listen to 24 hours a day. So I got pretty wide-ranging musical taste. Not only did I see Bruce Springsteen last week, I also saw Glenn Campbell, who, a country music legend who has Alzheimer's or early onset Alzheimer's and is traveling with his kids one last time.
Yeah,
so I love to see music. Love to go and see music when I'm on the road.
That's awesome. Jack, I really want to thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule today to come on the podcast. This was great. Everybody should follow Jack on Twitter. His Twitter handle is @JackCurryYes. Make sure to look out for him on the Yes Network and at YesNetwork.com. Jack, thanks again, and good luck this season.
Thanks very much for having me, Tom. I appreciate it. It was fun.